Welcome to this first module on incentives for active mobility and sustainable commuting. Through this module, we begin focusing on the multifaceted theme of incentives for active mobility and sustainable commuting in functional urban areas, such as those addressed by the Green Path project. However, in doing so, we aim to provide a general understanding of key concepts whose validity extends to a wider territorial coverage. This understanding will also be supported by relevant examples, such as those that will be showcased in the following module. Bearing in mind this general approach, this first module focuses on the conceptual framework in particular. Hence, we will start by discussing the key rationale for incentivizing choices by individuals towards sustainable mobility, in particular commuting. This can be done with reference to different modes, such as those related to public transport, as well as active mobility, such as cycling and walking. As regards incentives, we will explore different typologies based on two key dimensions. In terms of the nature, it is important to highlight how incentives are not exclusively financial. Hence, non-financial incentives will be duly outlined as well. Concerning the targeting approach instead, incentives can range from universal policies targeted at the general user base to highly granular tailored solutions for specific users. Whatever the type of a given incentive, it will certainly require resources to be implemented. In order to weigh up its adoption and justify the investment, it is essential to consider the key rationale for incentivizing choices by individuals towards sustainable mobility. To this end, expected benefits can be estimated by taking into account the reduction of emissions, congestion, and other transport externalities generated by individual trips. In this regard, offer a complementary carrot approach to internalizing external costs alongside stick charging measures such as tolls for specific vehicle categories can be beneficial. Taking into account the choices made by individuals and the fact that they are related to their own perceived utilities, there are two main complementary drivers for attaining the desired behavioral change. First, incentives, which aim to align single user's optimum with the system optimum. Second, information and communication for raising awareness. This is the reason why, at the end of this unit, a dedicated module will focus on the key aspects of effective communication campaign. Considering the benefits associated with the modal shift from private cars, as well as the importance of catering for accessibility needs of communities and cities, public transport is already heavily subsidized, though with remarkable variability by public authorities throughout different countries as common practice. Hence, keeping fares at lower levels than those needed to ensure financial availability of the service already represents an indirect form of incentives. As we will explore later in this unit, innovative mechanisms such as micro-incentives are more targeted programs which can offer complementary strategies for incentivizing behavioral change. For the time being, however, we focus on the object of the incentives, that is, what we are incentivizing users towards. And this includes also other emerging innovative approaches such as mobility as a service frameworks. These frameworks are meant to provide an appealing and competitive alternative to car dependency by synergically joining and integrating different sustainable modes of transport, whilst providing users with ICT tools for seamless intermodal connectivity. Only in this way we can smooth the execution of multi-leg journeys, coping with the need to cater for varying trips length and destination, as well as different users categories. Within this broader framework and systemic approach, active mobility, is walking and cycling, plays a particularly crucial role. In fact, active modes rely on human physical effort rather than engines, making them inherently sustainable. Using them implies drastically reducing CO2 emissions, as well as air pollution and noise emissions in urban areas. Beyond environmental benefits, fostering active mobility is a critical public health measure. Physical inactivity, in fact, is a major risk for non-communicable diseases such as cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and obesity. Regular moderate intensity physical activity, as walking and cycling, can significantly reduce these risks and improve mental well-being. Therefore, making walking and cycling a routine part of daily life, as in the case of commuting, offer a key advantage. It is easier for people of all ages and backgrounds to increase their physical activity without requiring additional time commitments, often mentioned as a barrier to exercise. Importantly, since there are no fares or tickets to pay for active mobility users, the objective of fostering them leads us to consider a broader framework of incentive topologies and dimensions, which will be explored in the following slides. Establish the strong rationale for promoting sustainable mobility, we now turn to the different approaches that can be employed to incentivize commuters. First of all, it's important to highlight that incentives can vary in their nature. They can be either financial or non-financial. In practice, effective strategies typically leverage two main levers jointly. The first lever is economic benefits, which are related to quantitative, objective advantages. These are particularly relevant for recurrent travel, such as daily commuting, when even modest savings accumulate over time. And this creates, of course, a remarkable comparative advantage for active mobility. The second lever is raising awareness and engaging users, thus addressing the more subjective aspect of perceptions. As we'll explore in detail when discussing communication campaigns, this is a key driver for achieving modal shift. Moreover, engagement can be pursued through various other synergic means, from ICT platform and digital tools to more traditional approaches, such as events and community initiatives. Having in mind the two main levers we just discussed, it's important to highlight that these traditional levers are complemented by innovative approaches such as gamification and the use of ICT platform, as just said, tools that are also being already explored in Unit 2. Gamification has increasingly emerged as an effective approach to encourage active and sustainable mobility by integrating game-like elements. These gamification strategies are typically based on ICT platforms that serve dual purposes. First, they act as effective motivational tools, engaging users through challenges and rewards. Second, they enable tracking and verification of actual results, ensuring the fairness of the competitive approach implicit in gamification. Moreover, the data collected through this platform can be valuable for supporting more targeted and effective urban planning decisions. It's important to note that the success of gamification initiatives often depends on effective outreach efforts and the support of local authorities. As we will explore through the concrete examples in the next module of this unit, these initiatives can be grouped into three key elements: mobile application and tracking platforms, competitions and awards, and community challenges with real-world rewards. Building on the discussed element, we can now examine a more detailed classification of incentives in three categories based on their different nature. First of all, there are economic incentives. This includes direct financial rewards, subsidies for purchasing bikes, reduced costs for public transport integration, and preferential access to services. The key characteristic here is the provision of tangible, quantifiable economic advantages that make sustainable mobility choices financially attractive. Then, the second category is behavioral incentives. These focus on encouraging habit formation and sustained behavior change through mechanisms such as gamification, challenges, goal settings, and progressive reward systems. The emphasis here is on creating engagement and motivation that extends beyond immediate financial benefits. The third category is social incentives. These leverage community dynamics, social recognition, and collective action. Examples include leaderboards, team challenges, public acknowledgement of achievement, and the creation of networks among sustainable commuters. These incentives tap into the human desire for social belonging and peer validation. Another dimension that can be used for the classification of incentives is the targeting approach. In this regard, we can distinguish two main typologies. The first is general use incentives. These are universal policies designed to be accessible to broad audiences without specific eligibility criteria, such as generalized public transport fare reductions. While this approach ensures simplicity and wide reach, it may lack the precision needed to maximize impact when the resources are limited. The second approach represents an innovative solution. Micro-incentives, also referred to as micro-subsidies. They are tailor-made reward schemes, either monetary or in kind, that are designed based on flexible and dynamic criteria to maximize the impact when budgetary constraints exist. Unlike traditional subsidies, micro-incentives are highly granular and allow for near individualized incentives adapted to users' particular needs and context. Those interested in exploring this innovative approach in greater depth can refer to a comprehensive recent study by EIT Urban Mobility mentioned in the footnote of this slide. Before concluding this module, it's important to highlight another emerging dimension in the implementation of incentive schemes, the growing role of business partnerships. While incentives are generally established and managed by public bodies or authorities, ranging from the national to the local level, a growing layer of attention is now paid to business partnerships. In fact, private companies, particularly those with large workforces, are increasingly co-financing these incentives either as part of their corporate mobility management plans or as means to enhance their ESG certifications and ratings. These firms may offer employee subsidies, transit passes, bonuses for active mobility, or even direct financial rewards for reducing single occupancy trips. In some cases, tax incentives and regulatory benefits can further stimulate the involvement of private actors, thus creating a win-win scenario for both public policy goals and corporate sustainability objectives. With these last remarks, we close this first module on the themes of the incentives, having set the conceptual framework. Therefore, I thank you for your attention and I see you in the next module.